listening to Full Circle Weekly News. These articles are compiled by Eric the Unready, and I'm your host, Moss Bliss. This is episode 376, covering week 29, July 15th to 21st, 2024. Linus Torvalds presented the 6.10 release of the Linux kernel. The most notable changes include the NT-Sync driver with Windows NT synchronization primitives, DRM panic components to implement an analog of the blue screen of death, discontinuation of support for older alpha CPUs, the ability to verify integrity in a fuse-based file system, restricting access to IOCTL through the landlock mechanism, a subsystem for profiling of memory allocation operations, MSeal system call, the ability to encrypt data exchange with TPM devices, support for high-priority work queues in DMCrypt, Panther driver for the 10th generation Mali GPU. The new version includes 14,564 fixes from 1,989 developers. About 41% of all changes introduced in 6.10 are related to device drivers. Nomad BSD 141R-20240711 is out, which is an edition of FreeBSD adapted for use as a portable desktop bootable from a USB drive. The graphical environment is based on XFCE. To mount drives, DSBMD is used. Most popular BSD and Linux file systems are available for use. Boot images are available for i386 and AMD64. The base environment has been updated to FreeBSD 14.1. The FuseFS module has been modified to reduce errors when using UnionFS. Nomad BSD specific graphics utilities have been migrated from Qt5 to Qt6. The GNOME Foundation has announced a new executive director. The post of executive director had been occupied by Holly Millian since October last year, who attracted attention with a diverse range of interests, from producing documentaries and painting films to founding an institute of shamanic arts and herbal medicine. The reason for leaving is the desire to devote time to obtaining a PhD in psychology and to focus on developing her own private practice. Richard Littauer, a Sustain OSS community activist, one of the leaders of the Curie OSS organization, community engagement manager for the Open Source Collective, and a participant in the development of the Node.js and IPFS projects, has been appointed acting executive director. The Foundation intends to present the search plan for a permanent executive director at the GUADEC conference, July 19th to 24th. Tails 6.5 has been created based on Debian 12, supplied with the GNOME 43 desktop and designed for anonymous access to a network. Access to Tails is provided by the Tor system. All connections other than traffic through the Tor network are blocked by the packet filter by default. Encryption is used to store user data in the Save User Data mode between runs. An ISO image capable of working in live mode has been prepared for downloading. The new version has significantly reduced installation time using the Tails cloner utility. The package base is synchronized with Debian 12.6. Tor browser has been updated to version 13.5.1. Problems with connecting to the internet through mobile broadband LTE and PPPoE DSL operators have been resolved. PeerTube 6.2 was released. PeerTube offers a vendor-neutral alternative to YouTube, Dailymotion, and Vimeo, using a content distribution network based on P2P communications and linking visitors' browsers together. The project's developments are distributed under the AGPL-v3 license. The OpenSUSE developers have begun discussions about changing the name of the project as well as restructuring management. The name change was necessitated by SUSE asking the OpenSUSE project to stop using the SUSE brand. Renaming OpenSUSE is not yet a strict requirement and is presented as a polite request to consider it. However, OpenSUSE is completely dependent on the SUSE company. Rebranding is at the initial stage of discussion, and proposals for specific actions, timing, and options for a new name have not yet been developed. NFTables 1.1.0 has been published, unifying packet filtering interfaces for IPv4, IPv6, ARP, and network bridges, aimed at replacing IP tables, IP6 table, ARP tables, and EB tables. The major change in the version number is not associated with any fundamental changes and is an incremental increase from 1.0.9. At the same time, the release of the companion library, libnftnl 1.2.7, was published, providing a low-level API for interacting with the NFTables subsystem. The NFTables package includes packet filter components that run in user space, while the kernel-level work is provided by the NFTables subsystem, which has been part of the Linux kernel since release 3.13. The kernel level provides only a generic protocol-independent interface that provides basic functions for extracting data from packets, performing data operations, and flow control. Audacity 3.6 has been published, providing tools for editing sound files, OGG, Vorbis, FLAC, MP3, and WAV, recording and digitizing sound, changing sound file parameters, overlaying tracks, and applying effects. Audacity 3.6 is the sixth major release since the project was taken over by the Muse Group. The code is licensed under GPLv3 with binary builds, available for Linux, Windows, and Mac OS. Google announced they opened the source code of the Google Blocks project, which provides a virtual 3D environment for creating scenes, objects, and models for virtual and augmented reality systems. Work within the program is carried out using virtual reality helmets, which instead of traditional process of developing 3D elements using flat screens, allows you to create models directly inside a virtual 3D environment. The code is written in C# using the Unity game engine and is open under the Apache 2.0 license. It supports 3D helmets like HTC Vive and Oculus Rift. The Start Wine Launcher project is out. The main goal was to simplify the process for beginners to create wine prefixes, a set of Windows libraries and dependencies necessary for running Windows applications on Linux. Features include a run-image-based container, no need to install system dependencies, and a friendly graphical interface. The Start Wine Launcher code is written in Python and distributed on a GPLv3 license. The interface is implemented based on the GTK library. Kent Overstreet proposed a change to Bcachefs for inclusion in the Linux 6.11 kernel. The implementation emphasizes Bcachefs file system's ability to automatically, transparently recover problematic data using stored redundant error recovery codes. The operating logic of the proposed functionality resembles the implementation of a similar function in Btrfs. If an I/O error occurs during reading or a checksum mismatch is calculated, the problematic data block will be automatically rewritten if there is redundancy from which to restore it. Linus Torvalds delayed the release of this change into the 6.11 kernel due to problems with the design of the patches and unanswered questions about the changes the patches made to areas outside of fs/bcachefs. Kent then submitted a second pull request for the 6.11 branch containing the fixes. NXS Backup 3.9.0 has been published, allowing you to create backup copies, perform rotation, and save to local or external storage. In addition to file backup, it supports creating backups of various DBMSs. The project code is distributed to the Apache 2.0 license. Backups can be stored both locally and in remote storage. Thanks to integration with monitoring, you can receive metrics such as backup file size, verification of backup collection, etc. in a Prometheus-compatible format. They also added an additional metric, NXS Backup Creation TS, containing a Unix timestamp of the date the backup was created. Each backup can be identified and configured with a corresponding alert in addition to or instead of existing alerts using hooks. NVIDIA engineers have published a note summarizing plans to transition NVIDIA's proprietary drivers to open Linux kernel modules for GPUs, starting with the Turing microarchitecture, GeForce GTX 1600 and RTX 2000. The modules used in NVIDIA drivers for the Linux kernel were open-sourced in the spring of 2022 under the MIT and GPLv2 licenses, and the plan to use them by default was announced 2 months ago. Providing core firmware functionality and user space components such as libraries for CUDA, OpenGL, and Vulkan remain proprietary. Until now, proprietary drivers included both open source and proprietary variants of modules that were updated synchronously, but the proprietary modules were used by default. The difference between the available options comes down to the fact that open modules can only be used with GPUs equipped with a separate GPU system processor microcontroller, which made it possible to move the initialization and control operations of the GPU from the driver to the level of proprietary firmware. In addition to new GPUs, proprietary modules continue to support older GPUs that are not equipped with GSP. NVIDIA intends to stop implementing support for new GPUs in proprietary modules and focus only on the development of open ones. For example, support for new NVIDIA Grace Hopper and NVIDIA Blackwell platforms is already available in open modules, which are not supported in proprietary modules. With the release of NVIDIA 560 drivers for regular GPUs starting with Turing, and for GPU virtualization starting with Ada, open versions of kernel modules will be installed by default in situations where their use is possible. In Ubuntu, Debian, SUSE, and OpenSUSE distributions, it is recommended you use the NVIDIA-Open package to install the open module version of NVIDIA drivers, and in RHEL-based distributions, it is recommended to use the NVIDIA-driver:/open-dkms module. The Apache Software Foundation announced the decision to change its logo, removing the image that has been used as the symbol of Apache projects since 1997. They plan to present the new logo to be chosen by voting of members of the organization on October 7th at the Community Over Code Conference. Natives in Tech organization, which defends the interests of indigenous peoples, is cited as the reason for stopping the use of the former symbols. In addition to changing the logo, Indian rights activists also demanded that the organization be renamed and the use of the word Apache stopped, but the community has so far limited itself to renaming the ApacheCon conference to Community Over Code. Nate Graham has published another report on KDE development. The most important changes over the past 2 weeks include the elimination of the 5 most common causes of KDE Plasma crashes, which were caused by both errors in the KDE code and regressive changes in Qt. A new automatic system for sending notifications about problems was used, which made it possible to understand which failures users encounter most often. In addition, work has been done to implement support for the sticky keys mechanism in KDE when using Wayland. This mechanism allows people with impaired fine motor skills of their fingers to use keyboard combinations that require simultaneous pressings of several keys. In the sticky keys mode, modifier keys, Shift, Control, Alt, can be pressed in advance before pressing another key. KOS 2024.07 is out, a distribution with a rolling update model providing a desktop based on the latest release of KDE and applications using Qt. Design features include the placement of a vertical panel on the right side of the screen. The distribution is developed with an eye on Arch Linux but maintains an independent repository of more than 1,500 packages and also offers a number of its own graphical utilities. The default file system is XFS. Builds are published for x86-64 systems. The LabWC 0.7.3 project has been published. They are developing a composite server for Wayland with capabilities reminiscent of the OpenBox window manager. Next, a corrective update 0.7.4 was published with hotfixes made. Among the features of LabWC are minimalism, compact implementation, extensive customization options, and high performance. The project code is written in C language and distributed under the GPL v2 license. The basis is the WL-Roots library developed by the developers of the Sway user environment and providing basic functions for a composite manager based on Wayland. The extended Wayland protocols include WLR-output-management for configuring output devices, layer-shell for the desktop shell, and foreign-top level for connecting custom panels and Windows switches. You can connect add-ons to implement functions such as creating screenshots, displaying wallpaper on the desktop, placing panels and menus. Animated effects, gradients, and icons with the exception of Windows buttons are not supported at all. OpenMandriva Rome 24.07 has been published, an edition of OpenMandriva which uses a rolling release model. The edition allows you to gain access to new versions of packages developed for the OpenMandriva LX6 branch without waiting for the classic distribution to be created. ISO images with KDE, GNOME, and LXQT desktops that support loading in live mode have been prepared for downloading. Builds for KDE and LXQT are prepared in x86-64, and ZNver1 variants are available. Builds with KDE come in variants with Plasma 6 X11, Plasma 6 Wayland, and Plasma 5. The Blender Foundation has published the release of Blender 4.2, a free 3D modeling package suitable for a variety of tasks related to 3D modeling, 3D graphics, computer game development, simulation, rendering, compositing, motion tracking, sculpting, animation, and video editing. The code is distributed on the GPL license. Ready-made builds are created for Linux, Windows, and Mac OS. The release has received LTS release status and will be supported until July 2026. The LTS branches of Blender 3.3 and 3.6 also continue to be supported, updates for which will be generated until September 2024 and June 2025 respectively. You have been listening to Full Circle Weekly News. For more details, see the next issue of the magazine at fullcirclemagazine.org or check the links in the show notes. You can contact me at bardmoss@pm.me. I'll see you next week.